story's a bit close to home, isn't it? Nigel Farage could be banned from hosting his GB News show as Labour looks to crack down on MPs making paid media appearances. The Parliament's new Modernisation Committee, that makes my blood run cold, today published a report looking at the tightening rules on second jobs. So should MPs have second jobs? Should media appearances be banned? Tom?
I think second jobs for MPs paying significant amounts of money because actually they're taking a significant amount of their time should be banned. That said, you know, we need to remember that in part this whole idea of MPs having outside interest, a bit of a relic of the 19th century, actually at a time when MPs were not paid. The Chartists made sure that working class representation and MPs could be paid. But these are people on, what, £94,000 a year now with allowances. Look, I know someone that has both stood for Parliament and failed, but also been a elected local councillor, where, you know, it is expected that you'll have a job alongside that job. Just how much bandwidth, how much personal investment you have to make in your constituents. There's a huge amount of casework, housing, immigration. So whether it's Nigel or indeed any of these other MPs, some of whom, according to this report, £233 an hour across the board is being made for those outside Parliament. It's a lot more than other parts of the labour force that have second jobs. So, yes, I would outlaw the kind of paid media second jobs that we've seen, but I would allow some exceptions, like, for example, military service, being a special constable, volunteering, and indeed being able to write books. I mean, we'd never have had Tony Benn's diaries, would we, if it wasn't for the fact he was scribbling away in his diaries after a day in Parliament.
What's the difference, then, between a job in the media, which MPs, politicians have done forever, and being, you know, and any other kind of job? Is it just about the amount of money that they make? Is it about the influence they can exert?
No, this is about public service. Now, look, Nigel's been...
I would argue Nigel's show is public service.
Well, yeah, but it's... Well, just look at what he's just registered in the members' interests in the House of Commons.
But does that
something
matter?
we know.
So
it's irrelevant, isn't it?
Your opposition to it is the amount of money they're making. This is just the politics of envy. I think it's excellent that politicians are able to do as they wish in their free time, and I think that Nigel's show is absolutely excellent. And at the same time, this whole notion, they shouldn't be earning this huge amount of money, I completely disagree. I want my politicians to have some real life experience. I want them to have second jobs. I want them to understand what it's like in the real world. I want them to have board member positions at businesses and presenter positions at GB News. I want that because I want my politicians to be real people.
Well, real people. But Reem, with respect, being with the real people would be Nigel 4 nights a week in his constituency in Clacton, where there are 58,000 people in that constituency that he now represents, had the privilege of being elected, that have got all sorts of problems. They lack inward investment, they lack educational opportunity. A member of Parliament should be focused on those issues, representing them in Parliament.
But hang on, but they voted him in knowing that he had this job, and they voted him in knowing that he is a very popular man that is in demand in various other areas.
I hear that, Bev, but he's also the leader, actually, of an insurgent party with its own ambitions, and I've got every respect as a Democrat for his ambitions, for example, to replace the Conservatives on the right of politics. But that won't happen if you're trying to, frankly, moonlight in all these other different jobs. It will happen by a concerted attempt to represent the people of Clacton, first and foremost, in Parliament, to represent the hundreds of thousands of members in reform, but also the 4 million plus people voted for reform. They need a leader of their own party that's focused on taking that party from 4 MPs to the future.
But this has got to be because it's Nigel, because David Lammy had a job on LBC.
Yeah, you earned £49,000. I say this about David Lammy, I say about all of them.
But this is silly. It's only become a problem because it's Nigel. This is the thing. And I mean, I completely disagree with you, Tom. I think it's excellent that these politicians have outside jobs, as I've just said. But I also think this entire notion that these politicians need to be, from what we think, need to be in their constituencies 24/7. I'd actually argue that Nigel is doing a lot more for the people of Clacton on his show, or indeed when he's in Parliament or doing these speaking appearances. He's doing so much more. And ultimately, it is only up to the voters in Clacton to decide whether or not they believe that Nigel Farage is indeed a good representative.
I agree with that.
OK, good. But does it matter about the type of jobs as well? Because I would be so interested to see what this modernisation committee concludes when they've looked into this.
It's arbitrary.
It does feel very arbitrary, and I don't think it is. It shouldn't be about the income that you make, because you could be a lawyer defending people who need your services whilst also working as an MP, and you could get paid very well for that. Now, they might conclude, well, that's good work. That's good work, so we'll let you do that.
Who decides what is good and what is bad? Who decides? It's so arbitrary.
But that's something that the modernisation committee will need to look at. Personally, where I draw the line on second jobs is around whether or not it counts for public service or not. Or frankly,
what does public service mean?
Well, I tell you what it does mean. And this was a slogan, actually, that Nigel and his party stood on during the 2019 election for the Brexit Party about changing politics for good. There's a deep cynicism in our country of our public representatives. They're seen as technocratic. They're seen like they've got their noses in the trough. It seems like they go up to Westminster to be part of the uni party and enjoy the whole gossip that comes about as the Westminster bubble. What the British people want to see, actually, are people focused on the things that they care about. Housing, educational opportunity, transport. I'm not just saying this about Nigel, I'm saying about all 650 MPs would do wise to focus on the people's priorities, not on their own pockets.
Well, what you might find is that people who are well paid outside of politics, like Nigel, might decide that they have a lifestyle which doesn't allow them to be an MP on £91,000 a year, which is not to be sniffed at, let's be honest. But a lot of chief executives of companies in this country earn a lot more than that. If you want the very best people to go into politics, you've got to pay them well. Would you like to see an MP's basic salary doubled? I
do think that MPs need to be paid more, and the reason for that is because if you are a incredibly successful, as you said, CEO of a company, you work in the city, you are going to have to take a pay cut if you enter into Parliament. Now, of course, your earning potential after you leave Parliament significantly increases. But actually, I think that if we want to ensure that members of Parliament, A, are much less likely to take bribes, and B, much less likely to do work that is absolutely nothing to do with their public services, you said, that actually we should be paying them even more.
Tom, would you like to see MPs' salaries raised?
The majority
I wouldn't put anything past Keir Starmer. He's taking it off the pensioners. I wouldn't be surprised if he doubles MPs.
Yeah, I mean, there is politics involved.
Of course, it would look bad. Yeah. It would look really bad.
I would take a wager that the vast majority of people watching this and listening to this are on somewhere between £26,000 and £33,000 a year.
Which is the average salary in the UK.
That is the median wage. And it includes teaching assistants, it includes nurses, it includes a lot of managers, it includes a lot of people in the private sector who, frankly, their effort and their value and their skills is not often valued enough. You know, the idea that £91,000 a year, which is under the 100,000 threshold, so they're not paying that marginal 60% income tax rate. But I do come back to this thing about, you go into politics for public service. If you go into it for some professional kudos and for lots of money, there are other professions. You're quite right, Reem. You've got think tanks, we've got lawyers, we've got private sector, we've got the city.
Think tanks do not pay well.
No,
I can tell
they don't.
You that.
not the rank and file people. They don't. But yeah, that's the point, Bev, isn't it? There are those CEO jobs out there. Go for those if you want to have that kind of lifestyle. But that's not what the role of a member of Parliament is. Yeah. OK. Right. Thank you both. Let us know your thoughts. gbnews.com/your say.